Welcome back everyone, let me jump right into it. So in the last video I built the lower door in the front, and today is all about the upper part. I decided that I definitely want another window section in the upper door right about here. And I will go through the actual building process a little bit faster than usual, since I did somewhat of a similar job in the last video. As so often, I used recycled material for at least the window frame in this build, and this time it comes from an old piano leg. I have no clue what type of wood it is, but it seems to be some sort of hardwood, and for sure it is bone dry. Now, if you happen to watch this, Gina, thank you for the material donation. I used the same method with a 5-inch hole saw to create a radius in every corner, and then I reinforced them with oak dowels. Okay, now it was time to set the two pieces in place, the upper part of the top door, which is hard to see as just one big piece of plywood. And I did spend my time with it to make sure everything sits in place where it needs to be. I actually used 10-pound weights to pin it down since I couldn't use clamps in this section. Now next I needed to join those two pieces together, and I used epoxy for this. Now this happened in 3 steps. First, I had to soak the edges generously with pure epoxy and let it soak in for a minute. Then I filled the gap with a mix of epoxy and a high-strength filler. I also applied a small bead on the inside. And third, I used a 4-inch wide strip of 6-ounce woven fiberglass to cover the edge. I came back to this a couple days later to make sure the epoxy is completely cured. I was very happy with how strong the joint turned out. Now from here on, I spent hours to fill imperfections with Bondo and to sand them down. Especially the transition and the corners needed some attention. Now this is also an example on how good quality plywood can save you a ton of time. Next, I needed to seal the surface before I could paint, and again I'm using epoxy for that, and I paid extra attention to the edges and wherever end grain was exposed, since those sections will soak up the epoxy like a sponge. As much as I hate sanding, there was unfortunately no other way around it. I had to smoothen out the surface again, and I had to get rid of the glossiness to give the paint something to cling on. All of that had to be done carefully, just so I didn't sand through the epoxy, otherwise the seal coat would have been pointless. Now, to put things in perspective for you, this step alone took me solid 6 hours. A lot of it had to be done by hand because the shape didn't always allow for access with the sander. So yeah, as simple as this door may look like, there's a lot of time and elbow grease involved. All of the work pays off though the second you put on the paint, and now the smooth surface really shines and the glossiness makes it look like fresh out of a factory. After 3 coats of paint, I moved on and installed first some double-sided window glazing tape, and then the customized plexiglass panels, which are made from recycled storm windows. Some clear silicone helps to keep the panel in place and seals it all up. Just like with the lower door, I used some edge trim to not only cover the edges and give it a professional look, but also to provide a seal. Now this edge trim has a EPDM foam rubber seal attached to it, which will provide the first layer of protection. Any moisture that gets past that will be stopped by the continuous raised edge around the door opening. Now both doors will be sitting right on the edge with some weather stripping in between as a final seal. To actually install the door, I had to move the boat for access. The ceiling in the garage is just not high enough. Now I added a lot of weight since the last time I did this, but it is still surprisingly easy to move. So a couple of years ago, I found this stainless steel handle or towel holder or whatever it is on a garage sale for $2. Can't complain about that. And I think I'm gonna try to install this as a handle here. And for that, I will have to bend those ends a little bit to make it fit with this angle here. And at the same time, it will serve as a brace. Well, that pretty much wraps it up. I added a couple more things off camera. For example, a 56-pound strut in the middle. The two 80-pound lift supports on the left and right were just not enough to support the weight of the door. I buy those things at Princess Auto. They come in all kinds of lengths and strengths, and when they're on sale, they go for around $10 a piece. That's really not that bad. So I tend to keep a couple of them around, and that way you can just play around a little bit, and it makes it easier to figure out the right configuration for you. Now, in the future, it will be important to me to be able to cover the windows completely for multiple reasons, and that's why I installed some blinds. I ordered them on Amazon, and they blend in really nicely, and they block out the sunlight completely if necessary. I also added two snap locks, one on the left, one on the right, and on the first day it was kind of tough to fully close the door, so I added those two tie-down anchors just to give me something to pull on. But now they're not even necessary anymore because everything's sort of settled in and it shuts nicely now, but they're still nice to have. Well, this was probably the last opportunity to do some serious epoxy work before the winter. We had a really nice summer so far, but the cold season is coming up, and usually I try to maintain around 10 degrees Celsius in the garage here during the winter, but that is still too cold for most glues, sealants, and varnishes to cure properly. So I'm probably gonna try to focus mainly on the interior of the boat here, and trust me, there's still a ton of work to do, so stay tuned for that. Alright, well, now that we're all done here, let me show you how the doors actually work, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you the next time.